We forecast this the other day, but the Bucs have decided to part ways with Jordan Whitehead, and they told him of their plans to go ahead and release him rather than honor the final year of his contract. He was going to make $4.5 million. None of that was guaranteed, and it's sort of I don't know really who's at fault here in a sense. Like there was a series of unfortunate events, as they say. First and foremost, like it was a great idea to reunite him with Antoine Winfield Jr. Those guys played some great football, when they won a Super Bowl as very young players. And then Whitehead went away, to the New York Jets for a couple of years, actually became a better player in terms of his ball skills, got to play a lot cover two, had 6 interceptions in a couple of years there. And Jason Light was so excited to get him back, and especially Todd Bowles, who told me, he goes, look, I don't have to worry now about communication. I got a guy on both sides of the field at safety that can absolutely, get us lined up, get us in the right defense. We know what he brings. He's kind of a chess piece. I can bring him down in the box. I can play him in coverage now. He's actually a better player than he was when he left. Well, a couple of things happened. One, the first of which, he didn't show that on the field. He just didn't make plays. Now, I think part of it is, Batman was missing in action, and Robin couldn't hold the fort. I mean, at the end of the day, Antoine Winfield Jr. is an all-pro safety and was paid as the highest defensive back in football after the year he had in 2023. But he got hurt almost immediately, and he ended up, missing 8 games with ankle and knee injuries. And without the two of them on the field together, which was rare because Jordan also missed 5 games of his own, they never got to work in tandem that way. And I think that's what they did best. And there's no question, like, if you don't make plays in this league, you're not going to be around for long. But just to make that worse was the injuries and the fact that they never got to play together. And then sort of you just look at his numbers, and he didn't have any interceptions. He had only 3 passes defensed. I mean, there was really, other than a couple of sacks, there was no area that Whitehead really excelled at. Had a few tackles, but they were down the field. What really wasn't even the run thumper that he used to be. And then, just to sort of cap it off, and in a way, from a business standpoint, maybe the Bucs are sort of fortunate from this. I'm not really sure. But right before the wild card playoff game, Whitehead was late for practice, and Todd Bowles has acknowledged this. They were supposed to be on the field at 9:30 on a Saturday, the day before they were going to play the Washington Commanders in the NFC wildcard game. And Whitehead is running late, and it's 9:33 in the morning. They're supposed to be on the field at 9:30, and he's heading southbound on Dale Mabry. And according to police reports, he's doing 80 miles an hour. Now, it's posted at 45. And I've been on that road a million times, and sometimes people go fast. They don't go that fast, okay? But worse yet, when he went to make a left, he's heading southbound. He went to make a left and go east on Martin Luther King. There was a car just sitting there at a light like you would do, obeying the traffic lights. And Jordan was driving his Corvette, and he lost control and hit this guy in the Sierra head on, just sitting there. And they both ended up going to the hospital. It was a very serious accident. Fortunately, nobody was seriously hurt in terms of life-threatening injuries, but they both were, I think, taken to the hospital. And Jordan wound up, having a neck sort of a cervical fracture, no spinal damage or anything like that. He's going to heal from it, but it obviously knocked him out of the wild card playoff game. If you think back of that game, Steve, I mean, they made some plays in the passing game over the middle of the field in the end zone that I don't know that Jordan Whitehead wouldn't have been a factor if he'd have played, but he wasn't able to, and that let them down. And that's not the reason why they didn't re-sign him. The reason they didn't re-sign him is twofold. One, he didn't make plays. Two, they're not completely sure about his availability and when he'll be ready. I think he will be able to play next season. But if you've got a non-guaranteed contract, you signed a 2-year, $9 million deal. The second year was not guaranteed at 4.5, and you've got a player who's not completely healthy. You made the decision for them. It's a non-football injury. They don't have to pay him. And so from that standpoint, that's a big reason why he was released. The other reason is Tyke Smith. Tyke Smith, they want to play safety, and I think if they believe he's ready to play every down at safety, that kid can play. He was good, really good nickel player, but he had to come off the field. I think that's probably almost a bigger reason why Jordan Whitehead may not be on this team next year.
Yeah, I think those are all the reasons. I mean, I think, as you said, it was a good idea. It didn't work out as planned, and then the way it ended didn't help either. They've got to get better there. They've and being able to move Tyke Smith there makes Whitehead expendable. I mean, it's a cruel world in the NFL.
Yeah, it is. It really
But
is.
it's not that Jordan Whitehead, isn't good, but just you got a younger player you need to move there. That's where he's probably going to be best suited to help your team. And
Yeah.
so the veteran's gone. I mean, that's pretty much the way it works anymore.
Yeah, and the thing, I just talking to the Bucs later, after this news broke, and like I said, it had been expected. They have to release him by the start of the new league year, which is March 12th. Better to do it now and give him a chance maybe to hook on somewhere or not. But um, the Bucs said kind of to me on the side that, look, it doesn't mean that we won't have him back, right? Um, you can't have enough depth in this league. Jordan's got to heal up, number one. Then he's got to go out there and see what market develops, if any. But he loves Tampa. He loves his team, and it won't be for $4.5 million. But there's a couple things kind of that worked against him here. In addition to his injury, is they like the idea of Tyke Smith being on the field, and Tyke Smith wants to play safety because he doesn't want to come off, and that makes sense. And then also, if you remember, late in the year, they had released this guy and he got picked up off waivers, and they got him back from a practice squad and put him on the active roster. Kayvon Merriweather ended up playing safety at the end of the season and did a really good job. And so they were impressed by his play. So if you got Kayvon, and you've got Kristen Izian, who can also play safety, and he'll be their starting nickel, especially with Tyke Smith moving back. You kind of have four guys that can play safety for you before you even go into the draft, before you look at any other free agents for depth. They're going to need guys for special teams and stuff like that might also play safety. But it's an easy fix. It's you have an ascending player, and we haven't had the draft yet, right? We hadn't had the draft. We don't know. Todd Bowles said the other day to us that obviously defense is their biggest concern, but he's frankly okay with getting a player at any level, and almost any position. I mean, what position other than perhaps defensive tackle where you still need depth? You've got Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea, but Will Golston's in all probability finished, right? Logan Hall had the best year of his career, but I think he's on the final year of his rookie deal. And so, there's not, you certainly need outside pass rushers. You need an inside linebacker. We'll talk about Levante David here in a minute. And you need possibly another corner or two for depth because you don't know the future of Jamel Dean. He may be the next guy that they tap on the shoulder. So, it's unfortunate, but it solves a problem with respect to Tyke being able to play safety, and you kind of elevate the young guys, and we may see him again, but I wrote a whole big story on him. Him and Winfield Jr. are very close friends. They're both kind of clothes horses. They go to Fashion Week in Paris. It's just really weird. One guy's from Aliquippa, PA, and he's like doing fashion shows in Paris. It's just funny. But they're both great guys, and they were really good players, and a big reason why this team won a Super Bowl. But that's the business, right? That's the business side of the NFL. And the one thing that in talking to Jason Light, up there in Indianapolis, he basically acknowledged that. He basically said that, hey, we really love this guy, but we have to make a really smart business decision. It didn't come down to, we don't think he can play, or we're upset that he got injured or anything like that. He just said, we just have to make sure we're making, unfortunately, in this business, a smart business decision. But we're still evaluating that. And now, of course, they're not. Jordan is a great guy. Love to have him back. Just need to make sure he's healthy. They've already got one player that they're kind of going to be iffy about if, in fact, Chris Godwin returns. You don't need two guys that are in that same sort of bracket, where you're paying players to play, but they're not able to. So that was a big part of it, for sure. Oh man, we got lots of stuff to talk about with Todd Bowles the other day at the Indianapolis Combine. Get right into that. But first, I want you guys to go down to International Plaza Mall. Have you not been to Breitling Boutique yet? We've been talking about them for a while, and that's because they have the best collection of Swiss watches you're going to find anywhere. First of all, the Breitling company has been in business for like 140 something years, right? And they've been in International Plaza Mall going on 5+. It's a beautiful store. If you're familiar with the mall, or even if you're not, kind of in the center of the mall, center left, if you will, upstairs. Just a great store, great customer service. They're used to dealing with professional athletes. You'll see some Buccaneers in there from time to time. But talk about a great collection of watches. They're known for the Navitimers, the Chronomat watches, and this past, I guess, really since before Christmas, they've had been celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary with these limited edition, all 32 teams represented in these beautiful Chronomat watches. These are team watches. They have the face of the watch itself is in the team colors. The logo's on there. They're absolutely stunning. You can go to our website, tampabay.com, take a look at the Buccaneers version. While they last, as they say, not sure how many are left. But regardless of that, you're going to find a watch that's going to suit you. Or, hey, how about your girlfriend or your wife? They also have women's watches there as well. These things are durable. They're sports watches. They have all the many wristbands to satisfy her. And I'm telling you, you're gonna love the customer service. You're gonna love the watch. And you're gonna have a timepiece that you're gonna keep forever and ever. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. When you go, make sure you tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right, so at the combine, we also had a chance. We talked about Jason Light the other day. We also had a chance to spend some time with Todd Bowles, and I thought it was interesting. Sort of he's there to scout, and again, no secret, mostly defense. But he said, in addition to just needing help, he broke it down. He made it very simple. Hey Todd, what are you here to look at? What do you think your biggest needs are, et cetera? He goes, right now for me, I want ball hawks. That was the key phrase, ball hawks. He goes, whether it's a down guy, a defensive lineman, whether he bats balls down or he gets strip sacks, whether that's an outside linebacker who does it, whether that's a linebacker who can punch the ball out or get turnovers. It could be a safety who can hit and jar the ball loose and get turnovers. It could be a corner who just has like a new nose for the ball. We need ball hawks. We need turnovers. We need guys who are very astute in the game and can see things and go make plays. And that's what the NFL is about. The NFL really comes down to who can make the most plays, right? And on defense last year, they were the quintessential bend, but only sometimes break defense. They couldn't get the ball back to their offense. Now, again, we've addressed all the injuries they've had. That was a big part of it. That's one of the reasons why they didn't have their guys, particularly in the secondary. The inside linebacker was an issue with Servassier Dennis going down. But at the end of the day, you got to have guys that can get the football. And the guy that did that better than anybody on this football team was Antoine Winfield Jr. Antoine Winfield Jr. filled up a stat sheet like nobody's business, right? He just did. And, the guy led the league by forcing 6 fumbles a year ago. Not this past season, but the year before that. And, 3 interceptions and 122 tackles and, over a dozen quarterback hits, 6 sacks. I mean, he did everything for this football team, and that's why he was all pro, and that's why the Bucs then turned around and made him the highest paid defensive back in the game. And so you've got a guy like that, but you couldn't keep him on the field. Couldn't keep him on the field. Got hurt early in the season, hurt his ankle. That slowed him. Came back. He had the one play he made all season was a scoop score for a touchdown at New Orleans after a fumble recovery. And then, he wound up missing half the season, missed 8 games. And so, I think the injury that he got limited his production. You saw him miss tackles. You saw him not be able to break down and change direction. I mean, you could see all that, right, when you were just watching him play. And the result was that the Bucs had the lowest total of interceptions, they only had 7 interceptions for the season. And that's the fewest since Bowles arrived coaching defense under Bruce Arians, back in 2019. That year they had 12. Then in 2020, the Super Bowl year, they had 15. And then they had 17 in 2021. Then it started to taper off, 10 in 2022, 13 in 2023. And those are good numbers, but just 7 last year. And, like I said, much of it had to do with the injuries. There's no question about that. We know how good Winfield is. But without him and without Jordan Whitehead playing consistently with him, it all kind of went nowhere. And, Bowles said that it's got to be something that we talk about going into the spring, into the summer. Part of the solution they think is to move Smith to safety. They say Tyke wants to play there. And I just think that when you look at their defense, who do they have that can impact the game and get turnovers? Not just impact the game, but get turnovers. You like the 2 tackles, you like Elijah Kanzi and Vita Vea and that sort of thing. But Yaya Diaby, who is an edge rusher, went from 7.5 sacks as a rookie to 4.5. Joe Tryon-Sawinko, who's not going to be back on this team, had just 2, I think, last year. And so you've got to get more. You've got to get more out of Chris Braswell. Promising rookie out of Alabama, just 1.5 sacks. Talking to Bowles, he says he's got to stop thinking. When he thinks, he slows down, and when he's not sure, he just goes. He plays with his hair on fire, and so he's got to get more physical. I think he's got a lean body. He's got to grow into that body and get a little more strength, so he can get separation from those blockers, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But turnovers has always been the name of the game, and that's something that Todd Bowles' teams have done from the first time he coached. And Steve, they just couldn't get any last year.
Just think how much better this offense would be if it occasionally had a short field. If it had a short field occasionally.
Great point. That's a great point.
I mean, as good as the offense is, and is most of those drives are long drives because they don't get short fields. They don't get those opportunities. How much better and quite frankly, how much better would your defense be if you get an occasional turnover? Because you get off the field some more.
You get off the field, right. Like, remember last year, it just seemed like every game they played, some team was going to drive 12 plays, 14 plays, and they may hold them to a field goal, but then you also had a bunch of games where your offense only had 3 possessions and a half, 4 possessions and a half, 2 possessions in a quarter. And you want to get your ball back to your point, to that offense, which is prolific. I mean, they averaged 29.5 points a game with a defense that did not get turnovers. That's really hard to do.
Extremely hard. The best teams, the ones that go to the Super Bowl, the ones that win in the playoffs.
Philadelphia, yeah.
It's Kansas City this year.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't win because of Patrick Mahomes this season.
No, their defense.
It was the defense. I mean, Detroit, when they were so good, had a great defense. Now they had so many injuries by the end of the year.
Sure.
But defenses that can turn the ball over, defenses that can shorten the other team's drives,
yep.
It's great if you get a 3 and out, and that's good and awesome, but they're going to punt it down the field 50, 60 yards.
True.
Occasionally you got to take that ball away. Give your offense a 30-yard field.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what about a scoop and score or a pick 6?
They had one touchdown, one defensive touchdown last year, and it was Winfield in the Saints game. That was
of course. I mean, that's the one you would expect. If someone's going to have it, it's going to be him.
Right.
There's
and that
nobody
was his
else on
first
the
game.
team you think was going to have it.
This was his first game back after a bunch of injuries. Just to sort of illustrate this is that when the Bucs won the Super Bowl in 2002, one of the more prolific defenses I realize in probably NFL history, and those guys have been together for almost a decade. But in training camp, as good as they were in training camp, John Gruden challenged that defense, and he didn't say, hey, we really need 10 interceptions, or it'd be great if we could get, a dozen fumble recoveries. What he said is, I need 9 defensive touchdowns. 9. And by God, by the end of the regular season, they got 9. And then they went into the Super Bowl alone and scored 3 times. Dwight Smith had 2 brought back, which is still one of the most amazing things, like in Super Bowl history, there's one player who has returned 2 interceptions for touchdowns. And it's a guy who didn't win the MVP because it was so late in the game. Gannon was just serving him up. Dexter Jackson actually had 2 interceptions in that game, and he won the MVP because he did it early on when it really mattered and it swung the momentum. But yeah, you know, when you have an elite defense, you not only get the turnovers, you score with them. You score touchdowns. And, you know, there's no rule that says you can't do that. So, you know, first you got to get players that get in position to make those plays. And then they got to, you know, when they get that opportunity, they got to make them. And I think, you know, for as much as, you know, if you watched them last year, the middle of the field was available to almost every team. Levante David, who's 35 years old right now, I don't know if he's going to come back and play or not. But he wasn't the same Levante David. He made splash plays, and at some point they turned him loose in the blitz, and he got a number of sacks. And look, he's still fun to watch, and he's usually in good position. He makes up for a lot of his lack of foot speed now with, you know, just understanding the game and you know, making the right reads and things. But he's 35, and I don't know that he's coming back. And if he does, I don't know. You know, Levante is one of the best all time, though, and this is the key. He's one of the best all time at forcing fumbles. I mean, the guy's forced, I think, more than 30 something fumbles in his career, you know, and, you know, so that he finds a way to get the football out. And that's the name of the game, is turn the football over. But there's no question that they've got to get better play out of some of these guys. And then then the turnovers will come. You need a better pass rush. You need a guy out off the edge to, you know, to make a play. Need Chris Braswell, who, you know, they drafted out of Alabama last year. Kid just had 1.5 sacks. He didn't play very much. But in talking to Bowles, I thought it was interesting. He goes, he's got to stop thinking so much. Usually they're like, oh, this guy he's not a smart football player. No, they want him to stop thinking. And he said when he thinks, he slows down. And when he's sure, he just plays like his hair's on fire. And you can see how fast and physical he is. But when he's not sure, he thinks about it, and he's kind of half speed. So we've got to get past that point. That can happen to a young player, especially at that position. I think if you're an edge rusher making the leap from college football to the pros, and I know there's been some that have done it pretty flawlessly, like Aiden Hutchinson and others, but that's really a big jump. That's a big jump when you're playing against grown men, you know, at tackle, and it's your first or second year. You know, it takes a while. And I think, you know, also you could use for some of these players to mature physically. Like Braswell's a slight guy to me. I think he needs to get bigger. I think he needs to get a little stronger, come up with some counter moves to the pass rush. And, you know, it may be as simple as that. It may be as simple as his improvement giving you another edge rusher with Yaya Diaby on the other side. But I know they're going to go into free agency, and they're going to look to see if anybody's available. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be Myles Garrett. But there could be some players. Remember, Shaq Barrett was a guy that nobody wanted, Steve. He had only, what was it? I think he had maybe 7 career sacks. He played all those years, like 5 years that he played in Denver, and was behind really good outside pass rushers. Comes to Tampa Bay on a 1-year, $4 million make-it contract and goes 19 and a half, you know, franchise record, damn near the NFL record. So there's guys out there, but you've got to draft and or sign and develop. And I think they'll go look down both avenues, you know, both certainly college and trying to draft guys, and then also free agency.
Yeah, Shaq had 14 sacks in 4 seasons in Denver.
Okay.
So he had 5.5 his first season, then a sack and a half, 4 and 3.
Yeah. And he was playing, you know, behind some great players in Denver.
Yeah. He only started 15 of those games. He started 6 his rookie season and 9 his third year.
Right.
The rest of the time he was
you're behind DeMarcus Ware, right? I mean, you know, Von Miller. I mean, it was hard for him to get on the field. And so, you know, there's guys out there, right? There's guys out there, some of them have been drafted and, you know, didn't produce right away, and then they go to another team, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes off to get a little bigger, a little stronger, a little more confident, change the scenery. And I think, you know, I really do think that Jason Light, rather than go, we're going to trade our, you know, first round this year, our first round next year, a second round this year, a second round next year, $20 million just to get Myles Garrett. It sounds like fantasy football. You know why? Because it is. I don't know that any team will give the Cleveland Browns enough for them to part ways. Obviously, Garrett said he's played his last game there, and that's problematic for them. But Jason Light traditionally has not been great at free agency. He's had a couple of hits, but he's also had a lot of misses, especially at edge rusher. So I tend to think that he's going to want to hang on to those picks and try to find another way and hope that Braswell and some others develop. But they've definitely could do a better job of being around the ball. Levante's, I would say, is still a ball hawk. But as Bowles said, he thinks it starts in practice and not the game we love. But he said, we've got to be more aggressive in practice. You got to get your hands on the footballs. You can't get them, unless you're trying to get turnovers. They're not just going to happen. And he's saying, I'm not saying we didn't try, but sometimes, practice gets a little short, and it's just kind of a shorts and t-shirt thing. And, you don't want to run into people, but, his whole deal is like, if we practice this way, trying to get the ball out, then when you go on Sunday, it's going to happen. But let me tell you, it just didn't happen. And, their defensive backs were playing off receivers. They weren't getting a pass rush. Like, nothing was sort of working in concert until maybe the end of the season. And then it got a little bit better. So they've got to find a way to utilize their playmakers on defense, and the young guys have to grow up. And then, you got to get the ball out. It's all about getting the ball out and protecting the football. So that's Bowles' plan, and every player he looks for in this draft, be it an inside linebacker, a safety, a corner, an edge rusher, that's what he's looking for. Show me the guy that has a knack and a penchant for creating turnovers. One other kind of a weird story that hasn't really completely revealed itself just yet, but I was getting on the flight home from Indianapolis when this broke, and the attorneys for Rachaad White put out a statement. Now, first of all, I was unaware that Rachaad White might need an attorney, but be that as it may, they alleged that he was part of an extortion, an attempted extortion, and that they had, the FBI was looking into it, and he wasn't going to be compromised that way, and that there was these false allegations or something. But basically, somebody extorting money, which is kind of a strange approach to take. It's preemptive, right? Like, if you think something's coming out, you can try to get in front of it, but there is no context, zero context to who we're talking about. What are we talking? We talk about a domestic issue, and then your mind runs wild. You see the problems that Justin Tucker's in, and Deshaun Watson, and it's unfair to think that, because Rachaad has given us no reason to think that he's anything but what he appears, which is a really good guy and a really good football player. And so I'm willing to say, hey, a lot of these guys are targets. We understand that. And, you can allege anything about anybody anytime, but where's your proof? But if it is true that someone's trying to extort him, it's unfortunate. And you hope that episode ends soon. But
the first thing I thought of when I saw that his lawyers issued a statement about something, I thought he was the Buccaneer that got burglarized in the heist with Joe Burrow and all that. That, we know there was a Bucs player that was impacted by that. They never said who. So that was my first thought.
Yeah.
But then when you read the statement, you're like, okay, that's not that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always go to if you're being that preemptive, I always go to the worst in my mind. It could be completely wrong, but.
Yeah. If you say extortion, somebody has asked for a monetary settlement.
Yeah.
Right. At that point,
I almost go, and I'm not saying this is what that anything happened or whatever else, but it's almost the Wander Franco type story.
I mean, you just don't know. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
It could be a domestic violence accusation. It could be It could be involved another dude that he got in a fight with over a tow truck. I mean, you don't know what it means. If there's nothing that we could see from a criminal standpoint. Civil records are often sealed, so that's a little trickier. They take time. But whatever it is, it's an unusual step, for attorneys to come out and preemptively say, hey, something might be coming down the pike, but we just want you to let you know without telling you anything about it, that it's BS and this is just somebody trying to have a money grab on us, and that's usually not done until or unless something's revealed. You usually hold that card in the deck, but not these.
Yeah.
Not
or
these
you might
attorneys.
give it a little more context than that. I mean,
right. Give it some. Yeah, give
vague.
it some context. Right. There's nothing.
But I assume that we'll get some context soon.
You would think,
whether
or at least they
Rachaad
think
White
so.
and his attorneys, or from somebody else, or law enforcement, depending on who knows what
the charge
what's being
might
alleged by anyone. I mean,
be.
and Rachaad may be completely. I mean, he may be being extorted, and he
Oh,
just decided
sure.
to go public with it instead of fighting it
Waiting
behind
for the
closed doors
accusation,
or whatever. I mean,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was bizarre. Like I said, the first thing I thought was like, oh, he's the one who was burglar. Well, no, that's not the statement. Like,
right. Now he may well have been, but that's not related.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which is awful enough.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing. Look, I don't know what Rachaad White does in his private time, but for the dealings we've had with him and I've had with him in the media and different things, he's a stand-up guy, been through some stuff, college route, Arizona State, different colleges and things like that. He's kept his nose down and just kind of played hard ass, tried to do whatever they asked him to do. And, really good teammate, smile on his face all the time, really cooperative with the media, maybe sometimes too much so. So I mean, I have witnessed nothing, and usually you don't. But that's not to say that something may tumble out here that's worth at least considering. But right now, it's a cone of silence, and that's what made it so lack of context when that statement was sort of put out there. One other thing before we go, did I see this correctly? I think Mark Tompkin wrote the story in the Tampa Bay Times and on TampaBay.com. Taylor Walls is not going down without a fight at shortstop.
Good for him.
Why shouldn't he?
Oh, right? And if he can raise his batting average about 75 points, then he won't go down without a fight.
Man, that's the thing. Like, the dude is such a good fielder, but honest to goodness, like,
incredible fielder.
There was a time when I thought, and it might have been 2 years ago. Remember when the Rays got off to that hot start, 13-0, whatever, and it was just contagious. Everybody was hitting, and for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I think Taylor Walls was hitting pretty well too, and then he wasn't. And it's you can live with it sometimes just for defense, but not all the time. I think he's going to have to swing the bat a little bit better.
Yes, he is. When someone who swung the bat well, first Curtis Mead had a home run today.
Curtis Mead, man, you see he's all jacked up now.
Yeah, and then Caminero, bases loaded triple.
I have no doubt. I'll say this about Caminero, like, just watching him play, if he organizes the strike zone, with him it's going to be about swinging at strikes, right? It's not going to be not chasing. They're going to try to do things to get him out and let him get himself out, basically. But that dude, he's got some bat speed that's rare, right? It's just rare, and his hand-eye coordination and bat the ball and all that stuff is there. It's there. So if you could keep him around for 140 games, 135 games, man, oh man, I wonder what kind of numbers he could put up. I really do. Special player. All right, tonight we've got the Lightning hosting the Flames. They go for win number 7 in a row. What a hot hockey team. One of the hottest, if not the hottest, in the NHL.
By the way, the last time the Lightning won 6 in a row or 7 in a row was March of 2021. That is a year that ended with a cup victory.
It certainly did. Good omen for the Rays, or for the Lightning. Maybe the Rays too, but for the Lightning certainly. And tomorrow we're going to discuss what is the annual NFLPA, NFL Players Association, rankings of various things within the NFL teams, all 32 teams ranked. Anything from travel to ownership and nutrition, all kinds of stuff. Where did the Bucs finish? Not as well as they would have hoped. And one category in particular I'm going to take great offense to and great issue with. And so you can look forward to that on tomorrow's podcast. Make sure to get your mailbag questions in. You can do that on Twitter or X at SportsDayTB. You can reach me at NFL Stroud, or my email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. Go see our friends at Breitling Boutique. Do it now. International Plaza Mall upstairs, Center Mall. Enjoy the store. Enjoy the men's and women's watches. the chronomats, the sports watches for your wife or girlfriend. You're going to love it, and make sure you let them know that you heard about all of it here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Thanks for listening. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.